Hi, greetings of the day, and this is again an interesting video, though it's a sad event, and this is regarding horoscope of a lady who lost her husband earlier this year. I think around Jan Feb, but definitely before April of 2025. So it obviously made more sense to cast the solar return chart of 2024. Now, if you see on the left, you have the natal chart of this lady, and on the right, you have the solar return chart. Okay. Now, since we are talking about widowhood, because this lady lost her husband, obviously there has to be a lot of malefic influence on the seventh house, seventh lord, right? So, by a quick look at her natal chart, if you see, Venus happens to be the seventh lord. Okay, Venus happens to be the seventh lord. And Venus is at 25 degrees of Taurus, and if you notice, right, for the trained eye, you see Saturn is casting a square aspect. Right, sorry, Saturn is casting a square aspect on natal Venus, right? Close degrees, right? Venus is 25 and Saturn is 27. So Saturn is casting a square aspect on Venus, and Venus is the seventh lord of the radix chart or the natal chart. So now, we want to see if this pattern is getting repeated, because end of the day, be it revolutions, be it transits, be it perfections, see, finally they will only reinforce or bring a natal promise to fruition. Okay, so with that said, look at the chart which is on the right, which is the solar return chart of this lady for the year 2024, right? And if you notice the same Saturn, assuming we want to see, we consider Saturn as an important chronometer. Saturn, if you see, is on the cusp of the 8th house. So the 8th house cusp is 23 degrees Aquarius, Saturn is at 22 degrees Aquarius. So Saturn is at the cusp of the 8th house, and Saturn in the revolution is again casting a square aspect, right? Saturn in the revolution is casting a square aspect on natal Venus. See, 27, 22 degrees, 25 degrees. So basically, the Saturn square Venus is getting repeated or magnified because it's already present in the natal chart, and this particular revolution chart triggers that natal pattern. So there's a repetition of Saturn square Venus in both the charts, and obviously Venus being the seventh lord, this could be a very troublesome year. And also remember that Saturn square Venus is also having the eighth house connotation, because in the revolution chart Saturn is in the eighth house of the revolution chart. As I said, you can consider house positions in the solar return chart, but not house rulerships. You will try and maintain the natal rulership because they will be applicable across solar return charts and fixed. Cool. So you know that, and Saturn is also contrary to the sect, and that is another reason it's going to be a lot more malefic. Now, apart from the square aspect, a harsh aspect from an infortune. So when I say infortune, we are talking about two malefic planets, Mars and Saturn, and they will obviously abide by their basic nature, which is malefic. Let us also look at the primary directions around that time. Okay. Now, if you see ascendant, right, the ascendant around 2024 was directed to the terms of Mercury in Gemini. Okay, ascendant directed to the terms of Mercury in Gemini. Okay. Now, if you look at the Egyptian terms, we're talking about the terms of Mercury in Gemini, and the first 6 degrees are allotted to Mercury in the sign Gemini. So basically 0 to 6 degree range is where the ascendant is directed to. So ascendant is directed to 0 to 6 degree slot in the Mercury, in the Gemini sign. So if you see, ascendant is 0 to 6 degrees of Gemini. So it is somewhere here, directed ascendant is somewhere here, 0 to 6 degrees of Gemini. And if you see here, right, in the solar return chart, right, in the solar return chart, you have Mars, which is at 1 degree of Pisces. So it is falling in that 0 to 6 degree directed ascendant, and this directed ascendant is actually facing a square aspect from Mars, right? So the directed ascendant is between 0 to 6 degrees of Gemini, and Mars is at 1 degree of Pisces. So 3, 6, 9, 12, they're all square, right? So Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, and Mars is in Pisces, and it is casting a square aspect, so a malefic square aspect, and that too Mars, if you see, as double confirmation in terms of 8th house matters, because Mars is present in the 8th house of the solar return chart, and Mars is also the 8th lord of the natal chart. So it's like a 8th house, 8th lord Mars is casting a square aspect on the directed ascendant. Okay, directed ascendant, which is in Gemini. Right now, look at the other point. When I said ascendant is directed to the terms of Mercury, right? Let us look at Mercury now. Mercury in the radix chart is in the 12th house, so it's in the it's in a very I would say it's in a negative house. It's also in its fall. Mercury is debilitated, being in Pisces, right? Even in the radix chart, if you see, Mercury is still in the 8th house. I know it is at the cusp of the 9th house, but pretty much it is still it has some 8th house connections, right? And Mercury continues to be debilitated. Okay, now let us look at the profected ascendant. I think I have covered profections n number of times. So when so in 2024, by April 2024, this lady had completed 44 years, and she was running her 45th year. So if I subtract 45 from the nearest multiple of 12, it is 36. So it was 45 minus 36 is equal to 9. Hence, the ninth sign from the ascendant will be the profected sign. Since the ascendant is Aries, the ninth sign is Sagittarius. Hence, the profected ascendant is 16 degrees of Sagittarius. So if this is 10 degrees, this is the profected ascendant, right? 16 degrees of Sagittarius. If the profected ascendant is 16 degrees of Sagittarius, profected descendant is going to be 16 degrees of Gemini. So profected descendant is basically somewhere here. Profected descendant, 16 degrees Gemini. Now, why do I consider this? Remember, profected descendant we are taking because we are talking about death of her husband, and hence descendant is the 7th house cusp. So the profected descendant falls in the sign Gemini, and Mercury is also the profected descendant lord, right? Are you getting me? Right? So the profected descendant lord Mercury is again very weak. So it is in the 12th house of the radix chart, it is in debilitation. In the revolution chart, it is again in the 8th house and it is debilitated. Or it is at the cusp of the 9th house but still debilitated. So that also gives some clues. Now, let us look at the sun, right? If you see the closest, and the reason I am taking sun is, remember, sun is also the sect light, and sun is directed to the terms of Mars in Taurus. Let us look at terms of Mars in Taurus. So sun is directed to the terms of Mars in Taurus, and if you look at Taurus, sun is directed to the terms of Mars, which is 27 to 30 degree range. And if you go to Taurus, right, 27 to 30 degree range, it again comes somewhere here, right? It's somewhere here. So sun is directed to the terms of Taurus, 27 to 30 degree range, and if you see again, the square of Saturn falls in the directed sun. So just to explain, Sun is directed to the terms of Taurus 27 to 30 degrees, and it is in Taurus. And Saturn is at 27.2 degrees of Leo. So again, Saturn is actually casting a square of Saturn falls in those terms. So uh, definitely there is a lot of Saturnian Martian influence, eighth lord influence, right? And definitely, as I said, the repetition of the Saturn square Venus. So all these things is giving us an indication that it is going to have a very nasty impact on her, and this is how it impacted her. And she lost her husband, and the way we are able to see that is especially the husband part is Saturn square Venus, Saturn in the revolution being in the eighth house, again casting that square, repeating that pattern, Mercury being the perfected seventh lord in debilitation. So lot of these things is giving us a hint that it could be connected with her husband. So just thought I wanted to cover this interesting perspective. Let me know your views, and uh, thank you for your time and attention on this. Continue to have a nice weekend. Bye bye. This is Subramanian signing off.